Hi, so my group and I are working on how poverty affects family literacy. We decided that we were going to use articles that have been provided to us in past modules, but we also decided that we should research some new articles from the FIU database. So one of the main articles that we discussed was called The Effects of a Language and Literacy Intervention on Head Start Children and Teachers. So after getting all our main points across, after discussing everything, we came to the conclusion that yes, of course, poverty does have a huge effect on family literacy. It has a huge effect on literacy development skills on children. So, from one of the articles, we read that children from higher income households are coming into the classrooms knowing way more words and having higher vocabulary than children from low income households, from children who are living in poverty. Now, this is not fair, and there is obviously a gap. There's a gap between high-income children and low-income children. So ideally, preschool would be, the place where they would close that gap, because we need to figure out a way to close that gap. Now, from the article that I mentioned, it said that classrooms serving low-income children still do not provide optimal support for language and literacy learning. So despite the fact that ideally preschool and those classrooms would be the place to close that gap, they're still not closing that gap. Now, they might not have the resources to, there could be many factors, but I think it's really important that we figure out a way how we can close that gap. Now, the reason why these higher income children are coming in knowing way more words and having higher vocabulary is because it's been linked that children who know more words and have higher vocabulary, their parents had rich, engaging conversations. They were always talking to them, they had a lot of support from their parents. Now, children in poverty might not always get this, and this is not because their parents don't care about them, but it may be that, if you're living in poverty, you have other factors like, you need to put food on the table, you need to work more hours, you need to find a way to provide for your children. Now, this may not provide the time for, always to be engaging in conversations, talking to your children, using high vocabulary. These parents might not have the resources they need. And this is why my group and I discuss why family literacy programs are so important, why preschool education is so important. Now, these parents might not have access to these programs. So we talked about how we encourage the funding of these programs and how we need to be able to close this gap, and maybe this might be a solution, funding these programs, funding preschool education, so that everyone and every child, no matter their socioeconomic status, gets an opportunity for a good quality education.